Before we get into the deck profile, I would like to note that the deck list will be at the end of the video. This is so if y'all just needed the deck list and don't want to listen to the explanation, y'all can go ahead and do that. For those of y'all that want to stick around, this duelist had a lot to say about the deck. Now, we don't want to be doing deck profiles where they explain like the standard. We want to see what they did differently than what they did from other lists. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get to this deck profile. Again, check the description below to go ahead and see where the deck list is at. If y'all need the dueling book link, make sure to join the Discord. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you guys would like to see more. If y'all like this, make sure to let us know. If y'all like to just hear the deck profiles and don't want the spoilers, make sure you stay tuned. Other than that, let's go ahead and get straight into the deck profile. What's going on, you guys? Slumpy here, back from the remote duel YCS, and we're here with our top 8 competitor. What is your name and what did you play?
Yo, what's good, Slumpy? My name is Kenny, and I ended up playing pure Spright.
Okay, and you were the only top 8 competitor playing Spright, is that correct?
Yep, it was the last one in top 8. I think only like 3 or 4 topped, but I was the last one in the tournament. So yeah,
Okay.
that's crazy.
Yeah, so what made you decide to play Spright for this event?
I decided to play Spright because I've been playing Spright since it first came out, and I know Tier Shizu right now, like everyone's saying, it's Tier 0 format's the best deck. But I felt like because I started off playing Spright, I was always kind of like behind the curve. So I stuck with what I knew, and it paid off.
Okay, and any shoutouts you want to give out before we get into the deck profile?
Yeah, so shout outs to my team TCG. Here's our mat right here. All our sponsors down there. And then also shout outs to my Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/KennyYGO. I actually was streaming DB Ladder, playing the same deck, and I made all the card choices on my stream. If you want to check that out, I'm actually top 10 on DB. So, lots of things that you guys can pick up there and learn. You can see how I play the deck. And I think I play different from other people, which led to my success at the remote YCS this weekend.
Nice. Also, be sure to check out Kenny on Twitter as well at Kenswin.
Yep,
All posted right here if you guys can see across from us.
that was a good
Uh,
pronunciation. I like it.
Thank you.
Yep.
But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the deck profile.
Okay, for sure. All right, so I won't be explaining all the basic stuff, but I will get more in depth and go over the things that needs to be explained. So for the basics, play Sprite. So 3 blue, 3 jet, the 1 carrot, and the 1 red. I think nothing to say here, right? Pretty much all standard Sprite
Yeah.
cards.
Why did you decide not to play Pixies?
Okay, yeah, so I get that question a lot because I know that people think that Sprite has a problem getting over big monsters, and Pixie is like really good for that. The only problem is Pixies is a engine card that takes up a slot in this deck. And right now, because we're in a tier 0 format, I think that you must take sacrifices in your deck to make it a little bit weaker in terms of utility because you need room to play non-engine cards. It's just so impossible if you lose a die roll against tier and not open 2 to 3 hand traps. You have to open 2 to 3 hand traps, is what I mean, to like at least have a chance. And so you have to make sacrifices by cutting those cards. If there was a way to play Pixies and it was always in my deck and I never drew it, I would 100% play it, but that's not the reality of things. So I like the card, it's really good, but I think it's a sacrifice that had to be made. Yep. And then for other engines, play 3 beavers, 2 nimbles, pretty standard, and then 3 swaps.
Okay, so why did you decide to play 3 Swap Frog over like 2?
Yeah, so that's a topic that I noticed a lot too because when I was playing online and when I was watching other deck profiles, I noticed I saw 2 swaps in a lot of profiles. And when I started testing for this format and this YCS in particular, I started with 2 because it just made sense to me, right? Like you would summon, swap off Gigantic, it would send the second swap, you make Elf, and it would send back to swap, and then you make your Toad. So there was no reason to play a brick third one. But in practice, when I was playing more games, I realized that having the body to summon off of Toad gave me a target to smashers, which is really relevant because usually your board is ends on Elf Toad plus whatever affects Sprite you have, either carrot or red, whichever of your liking. And when you have a Smasher set, you don't really want to Smashers any of those cards because Carrot is a utility card, Red is a utility card, Elf obviously is a utility card, and you definitely are not Smashing a Toad, right? So like you needed the extra body to be able to Smashers because a common play against a Shizu tier is they will start off by activating Planet to like bait out your cards, and you don't really want to Toad the Planet because they can just play another one. So you want to be able to Smashers the Planet because if you let the Planet resolve, they can start chain blocking, which isn't like good. So you have to get rid of the planet, but the best way to do it is with smashers. Uh, but you can't smashers if you don't have an extra body, because then you'd have to smash for something of value, which is not good. So that's why I think playing the third swap came up a lot, and I think it's something that you need to like play, like actually play test to like find that out. Because in theory, two is correct. In practice, I think three is the right number for swaps.
Okay.
Cool. And then the fun part of the deck, and the reason why I only did well because Spright is not that strong, is the non-engine hand traps. Bestial Spright, so 3 Magnemite, 3 Druid Swarm, Soraneer, Ash, Meister, and Perm. These were my non-engines. If you have any questions on that.
Yeah. So first off, with the Bistios, why did you decide to only play 7 instead of playing all 9?
Right. I actually started off playing with all 9 at first as well because opening multiple Bistials, as you know, is really good against Shizu tier. You can see almost all deck profiles of Shizu tier. They always say that, oh, I can't win if they open 2 Bistials. 2 Bistials is just really broken. And I agree with that. The only problem is, in this deck in particular, uh, the effect of these 6 matter a lot, especially Druid Swarm. And you're probably wondering why, because these effects are like very small and niche, but they do come up a lot, and especially in this deck. So what I like to do with like Drew Swarm a lot is it helps you break boards that you normally couldn't break because you can use its effect, the pop the special summon effect, after you resolve Gigantic Sprite. So during the process of me breaking a board, I'll Gigantic Sprite first, and then I'll use Drew Swarm's effect to like kill floaters such as Kaleido Heart or like uh, Chillimate cards that are special summoned back, and they can't come back, they can't float, they can't do whatever because now they're locked in a gigantic sprite. And that just comes up a lot. And that's like a really important thing. And another really important thing is that like this card outs Baguska, which is a huge problem for this deck because anytime you play against a Shizu tier, once you hand trap them 2 to 3 times, if they can't play the game, they'll immediately try to go into Baguska so that they can stall and play again the next turn, which is really effective against a strategy like this, Flunder, any like rogue deck, as you all know. So having the Drew Swarm's effect is just extremely relevant, being able to pop a goose game, being able to play after. So I find myself a lot of times when I have a Bistio in my hand, it really needs to be a Druid Swarm or a Magnemite to search the Druid Swarm. Often not, it cannot be a Soraneer by itself, but I did play it because obviously if you draw a Druid Swarm, you have Magnemite, then you're able to search the Soraneer, so you have more options. And I mean, it's not a brick; it's still a hand trap. So I thought it was good. But again, Druid Swarm's effect is just so relevant that you just can't really play the Soraneer, I think. And that's about it.
Okay. And then as for like the Ash and Perm and Schoolmeister, were those like the
Yep.
top 3 choices that you had, or did you ever think that like Bell or like Effect Veiler or even like Ghost Runner, like do you think any of those cards are better than these, or like why did you decide to play these?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because I did start with Bell and I did start with Valor, all those cards, and they took over the slot of Skullmeister because I think these are very generic and standard already. Because this is just a God card against Flunder, and this is just a God card against almost any deck. Because hitting Cacao is really good, hitting like the Flunder cards are really good. Obviously, everyone knows Imperm's crazy right now. Even tier limit decks are playing it, but the card that I tried. Um, the Bell and the Veiler that I tried was this slot, which ended up being Skullmeister in the end. Because when I was playing against a Shizu tier, which is the most popular matchup, as they all know, I was losing a lot whenever they would resolve any of their Mill 5 effects, which is Agido and Kelbeck. And whenever they Agido and Kelbeck, Bell didn't stop that and Veiler didn't stop that, they would get so much advantage that I like couldn't handle it. Um, like the Ishizu cards, obviously everyone knows that's the reason why it's tier 0. So I just threw in the Meisters because I had to stop the Mill 5. Like the Mill 5 applies so much pressure to like this type of deck, which is way slower than their deck. So when I threw this in, I noticed that I was winning a lot more because whenever you draw like any of these cards, it's almost like they're kind of just playing regular tier limit because you're able to stop the milk 5 effects with like one of these guys. And I think in the long run, that's really good over Valor and Bell. And Skullmeister is pretty much the only hand trap that can stop Agito and Kelbeck. And it still does the same thing as like any of the Bistro or DD Crow cards besides not being able to chain block. But I think it was worth it because having a card that's multi-purpose and it's the only hand trap that can stop Agito Kelbeck is why ultimately it was like my hand trap of choice over the rest. So yeah, all for the non-engine hand traps. And then just the last spells, 3 starter, 2 smashers, and then 3 prosperity. Clean 40 cards consistency.
Okay. For the double smashers, why did you decide to play 2?
Okay, double smashers. The only reason why I ended up playing double smashers, even though I really wanted one, was because of the millers. So whenever there was Avagito Kelbeck and they milled your 1 smashers, it was really annoying to even attempt to crack the board because you don't really want to go into your extra deck as Spright to clear a big monster unless you like have to. A very clean out is just Jet Search Smashers. Like you want like the clean outs so that when you do your play, you're actually doing real plays, not like summoning 2 random level 2s just to make like a Soul Sweeper or a Sky Cavalry. Like that's not ideal. So I ended up putting in 2, even though I didn't really like it. It's kind of bricky, but if I milled one, I definitely, or if my opponent milled it for me, I definitely wanted one in my deck. So ultimately, I think 2 was the right number, and it worked out all day. It was really nice.
Yeah. Another question I also had is off of
Yep.
prosperity. So like, what would you
Yep.
banish going first versus like going second?
Okay, yeah. So I see people actually ask this a lot because this card can be a little bit awkward to use. So specifically, I'll go very in depth about this prosperity actually, which I don't think anyone really goes over.
Hmm.
So first off, with prosperity, whenever I go first, I will side out this, or not side out, take out, banish these, this and this. So the reason why, so first of all, you'll notice that like I pulled out 6 here because no matter what my hand is, no matter what it is, I will always manage 6. I would never go for 3 ever, and it will always be these. So the reason why I always banish 6 is because before I do my play, right? Oh yeah, and also another thing to note is that like I'll always play prosperity first too, which I see some people play it last after their combo. And I guess I'll explain everything all in one. So every time I start off with prosperity, and it'll always be for 6, is because I want to mitigate Haviness as much as possible. Shizu is the most popular deck, so I'm always gonna assume that my opponent's playing Shizu, even if I don't know what they're playing, right? So I always want to mitigate the impact of Haviness. So what does that actually mean, right? So assuming my hand already has engine, like for example like a beaver, right, or like 2 blues, or like something to already play the game, I'll still go for 6 because it increases my odds of hitting Meister, Ash, and all these bestial cards to reduce the chances of Havinous being able to hit a lot of cards, to be able to hit a lot of names. Because I don't want to do my combo first, and then they go Havinous, and then they hit a name, and then they make like a board on their turn, and then I'm sitting with a prosperity in my hand that could have gotten a Magnuma, it could have gotten a Jerusalem, it could have gotten any one of those hand traps. So I'll always go for 6 so that I can see one of those cards. Even if I have combo, I always want to see a card that can mitigate the impact of Havinous, and I'll always go for 6 because of that reason, and I'll always play it first because of that reason too. Um, and as for why these cards in particular, when I go first, I will take out all of these because this is for Raguska, which never comes up when you uh, go first. And then Zeus package, obviously it's Zeus, so it's a go second card. Cat Shark because it's an OTK card, so it's something that you probably use when you're going second or on turn 3. But if you're going first, you should, in theory, already win. So I don't think you need a card to OTK, so I'll take this out. And then Wallow was the last card because it's the most like flex utility card. I mean, it's a rank 6 in a level 2 deck, so it seems like a pretty easy prosperity to me. And yeah, that's pretty much how I use prosperity in this deck, at
Ki-
least for going first.
Yeah. Another question also for going first. Do you
Yep.
ever not banish the Wallow because you already have multiple Bystials in hand? Like, would you ever like decide, hey, like I have like two Bystials in hand, and I think these are gonna pop off next turn? Is there anything you would substitute in that instance?
Yes. Depending on my hand, I will substitute either Wallow or the Gin Buster.
Okay.
So the reason behind that is you can only make the Gin Buster when you open a really good hand consisting of like Beaver and Blue. So if I don't have like that 2 card combo, you can't really even go into the Gin Buster because you don't have the right materials. So if my hand isn't like that strong, or I know that my hand can't reach it, like to get Beaver plus Blue or like a really good hand, then I'll banish this. But if not, I'll banish the Wallow. Yep. Yeah, and then going second, I actually banish the same, even though like you might need these cards. Actually, it kind of depends, I think. But typically, going second, I always hide this card out no matter what. So like I won't really run into that problem. But for game one, I usually try to keep it consistent and banish only these. But this card is just not that good going second, anyways. So I try to like if I really need like my Zeus package or whatever, I'll just banish these three and then not the Zeus. So yep.
I think it's also important to note that like Prosperity is also just not as good going second, especially when you're not playing any board breakers, at least in the main deck that I
Yeah,
see.
right. Yeah, Prosperity is just not a good card, especially into negates or like established boards or anything like that. So card to side out.
Yep.
All right, that's it for the main. I'll go extra.
Yep.
All right, so links play 2 elves, Spring, Dark. The code breaker that I was talking about earlier. These are my only links, and then all XYZs. Toad, obviously for the uh, frogs, two gigantics, Jin, Sweeper, Wallow, Cat Shark, and then the Zeus package.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of different choices when it comes to the extra deck and in sprites. You see a lot of different variances. But I think one of
Yeah,
the most important notes to at least start off with is Mannequin Cat. So I
right.
see a lot of other lists playing, like the Testudo with like the Chaos Hunter. So
Mhm.
what's your reasoning behind not playing Mannequin Cat?
Okay, no Mannequin Cat. So I started off this deck with Mannequin Cat. It was funny because I had multiple cards in this extra deck before it became this. And when I was playing Mannequin Cat, I was playing it like with the Testudo, with the Chaos Hunters. I'm very aware of that combo that Joshua Schmidt popularized of summoning Mannequin Cat and then, Thunder when you shift through, you summon the Chaos Hunter, or Testudo against the tier decks. But I ended up not playing it simply because I noticed when I was practicing, like this is in actual playtesting instead of theory, I realized that those cards weren't needed whenever you resolved full combo. So, in order to get to Mannequin Cat and set it up properly, you needed to go uninterrupted, right? So your Mannequin Cat needs to resolve, and they can't have like Havness, they can't have Kelbex, they can't have Bystials to threaten your Mannequin Cat before you can even use it. So you really needed to go uninterrupted when you had the Mannequin Cat. But I feel like if you go, or I noticed that if you go uninterrupted and you just end on double tone, like with the elf, with the smashers, with your potential hand traps, you already won the game because they didn't interrupt you at all. And whenever you had double toed, all you had to do was like stop them early on, the tier player early on, and they couldn't really play after that. However, whenever they did have you and they did Kelbeck you and stuff, you wouldn't be able to get to the Mannequin Cat anyways. So I think playing that card along with the bricks didn't really contribute to your problem of winning when you went first. So I ended up not playing any of those cards, even though like when you do resolve them, they're really good. But I think to simply put it, I just think those cards are very win more. Like you already did your combo uninterrupted. I don't think you should be able to like go interrupted and floodgate your opponent. Like that seems a little bit excessive. Um, so I didn't make my deck in a way where like it helped me more going first. I rather focus on going second.
Okay. As for like the rank 6, do you think Wallow is the best rank 6 in this deck as for the option, or do you think other options like M7 or other cards are a different decision? Or I guess why would you decide to play Wallow over all those?
Yeah, so I see a lot of people play Wallow. The only debate I think between the rank sixes would be playing Beatrice, because a lot of times you'll be bricking with this deck when you're drawing multiple Bestial cards, and having Beatrice to send Angler is like pretty nice. But I found that it was a little bit too gimmicky for my liking, because it's like if you have to start your engine through a Beatrice, it just doesn't even sound right. So I ended up playing the Wallow in the end. Um, this card, it never came up. It didn't come up over the weekend, but it's a really funny card. I don't know why, but me and my friend talked about this card too. And whenever we cut it, it always came up. And whenever we played it, it just never comes up. So yeah, obviously I played it and it didn't come up, but typically whenever I do summon this card, I usually use it to take utility cards. Because being able to summon this card as interruption is really hard because it just doesn't do enough because it takes away two materials. So you're really always summoning this offensively to take their cards, right? So the only time I ever summoned this, during testing at least, was to take power spells like Dark Ruler, Talents, or any of those type of cards. Talents, particularly in particular, I noticed that every time I summon this card, I end up taking someone's talents. I don't know why, but um, especially when you're mostly playing a Shizu tier, you're not really taking any of their cards because I mean you're playing Spright, so you're not doing anything with their monsters really. You're really just trying to take their utility cards that they milled that would have been good against you. Like they side Dark Rulers, you can take it, Dark Ruler them, or you can take talents, take one of their monsters, and that's typically how I like use this card. But for this weekend, didn't come up, and any other rank six was a little bit gimmicky, I think.
Okay, and then I know some other people also play the OTK card, the number two. What are your thoughts on that card?
The mosquito, right? Is
Yeah.
that what it's called? Right, right. Okay, so that card was brought to my attention, I think, last week. And when people were explaining to me how you OTK with that card, they always said, I'm not too familiar with how that card's exactly worded,
Hmm.
but I just know that like you need a lot of bodies to do that. And I think every time you have like multiple monsters on the field, you are already in a position where like you're winning because how are you resolving starter, gigantic sprite, elves, like all these cards that generate so much monsters and not like being in an advantageous position. So I didn't think the card was needed. And anytime I had multiple monsters, what I would do is I would make a gigantic that was like under a sprint or an elf to make it really big, and then I would just summon my cat shark anyways. So instead of like going to the mosquito with like a bunch of level twos, whenever I have that exact board with multiple level twos, I would just do this, and this is like pretty much an OTK in itself, anyways. So I didn't think the other card was that good, in my opinion. I haven't actually tested it a lot, but from the theory, I didn't think the card was that good.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So for extra, I'm going to side.
Yep.
All right, so side, 3 gamma, obviously driver, uh, 3 nibs, 3 shifter, obviously, then harpies, 3 cosmic, and a double cross.
Okay, so I guess first things first,
Yep.
Nibiru.
All
What?
right, hot
Yeah,
topic here.
yes.
Yeah. Yep, yep.
Yeah, so what was the decision making behind like playing Nibiru? Because like a lot of it's a huge discussion right now. With everybody saying like Nibiru isn't
Right,
that good.
right.
I think it's like in a similar topic of this format as like Super Poly as well, right? Um,
Yeah, very controversial card that like people say that it's bad right now, right?
mhm.
Yep, yep. Okay, so Nib. This card obviously isn't played right now, and I think cards like Nib, Super Poly, Evenly, like you were talking about, all those type of cards are always better when they're bad, which is really funny to say. But because a lot of people disrespect this card, it becomes really, really good. And I noticed when I was testing, and I only signed this card for the mirror and other like rogue matchups such as like Pendulum and Insuria, things like that. But anytime I was playing this deck, I realized that if my opponent at any time had Nib, I would instantly lose. Because the combo nowadays always goes through Sprint. You always go Sprint, send Anglers to get the extra body. And you do that play, and you do it so confidently because no one really actually plays nib. Um, so I ended up playing nib because I thought I would play at least one or two mirrors. I ended up playing none, so I didn't side this card in all week. But anytime anyone would nib me, by the way, I got nib 0 times during the event, right? So like, yeah, but I realized that like at any point someone would nib me, I would instantly lose. And I think that just shows how like powerful this card is right now, especially in the mirror. So I just wanted a card that gave me a free advantage in the mirror and against all those rogue decks because it's not played around at all. And nowadays, if you notice, if you remember in like past formats, you would need nib plus like imperm or like nib plus something, right?
Hmm.
But like nowadays, especially with Spright, they don't set up anything, so you can just draw nib like solo without a hand trap and it would just carry the game. So like that just made this card really appealing for me. It's really good like right now. Um so good in the mirror, and I think it gave me a really good edge in the mirror and all those like rogue decks. Didn't use it all weekend, but in testing it was amazing. I love Nib right now. It's really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Your back row hate was Cosmic and Feather Duster. Why did you decide to play those over like any other like Lightning Storms or Evenlies or anything else?
Yes. So I started off with playing Lightning Storms originally, but I switched it to Cosmic just because with Lightning Storms I really couldn't side it in when I went first, and I wanted a card that overlapped against Tyr and Flunder. So obviously with this card, you can hit their Dreaming Towns going second, you can hit like Solix going second, but also in the reverse, when you go first, you can hit Screams, you can hit Planets, and against Flunder, you can hit Map, which is like really huge, right? So I wanted a card that had versatility that could go first and could go second, and this card was like perfect over Lightning Storm because I actually borrowed Lightning Storms from a friend. Shouts to Edmund. He let me borrow his Lightning Storms, but I ended up not playing it in the end just because like the versatility of this card being able to go first at the same time just made me value it over the Lightning Storms.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
guess my final question, and I guess this kind of also portrays into two questions at one, is
Yep.
I see that you weren't playing Fenrir, which could be
Right.
considered like a like board breaker like card. And again, like I didn't see any board breakers in your
Mm.
main deck either, and none on this
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
So I guess why did you decide not to play Fenrir? And I guess like also kind of portray that into the whole like
Not board breakers, right?
yes, yeah.
Right. Okay, so I actually have a this is just my own theory about the concept of board breakers and Fenrir. So if I wanted to play Fenrir, Fenrir is obviously a non-engine card, right? It's not an engine card, which means in order to fit that non-engine card, another non-engine slot would have to be cut. Like I'm not gonna cut an engine card for a non-engine card. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
So with that theory in mind, I figured against tier, I always needed two or three hand traps. Mainly three actually in this format to be able to at least attempt to stop them. But Fenrir made it so that my hand trap count would go down. So whenever my hand trap count would go down, I would open one hand trap, two hand traps sometimes because I'm playing Fenrir. And with that, they would still do their full combo. And even though I have Fenrir in my hand, I still wouldn't be able to crack the board because my one hand trap was basically just a -1 because most of the time they just go through full combo anyway. Like it didn't matter. So the one Fenrir wasn't helping. But if that Fenrir was a hand trap slot, those two hand traps together would have had a chance to stop them versus a hand trap plus a Fenrir, which would not be able to stop them. So that's a big reason why I ended up not playing Fenrir, even though I know how broken the card is. I just didn't think it was good with my strategy, which ties into the whole board breaker philosophy, right? So my whole goal is to open 2 to 3 hand traps. I'm playing all hand traps because I think I have to draw two or three, and that's my theory. And I think that's what's been working for me. Every time I draw 2 to 3 hand traps, I'll win the game, right? Even if I don't even, sometimes on rare occasions, even if I don't see engine, I'll still win if I draw like a 4 hand trap hand. And you can also read that in my feature match in top 8. I won game 1, even though I drew a hand of triple Bistio, double Imperm. That was my opening hand. And he milled 15 cards on me, and I somehow still won, even though I had no engine. So I would, so the only way to like actually do that is to play multiple hand traps. And if I'm playing board breakers such as Dark Ruler, Super Poly evenly, I would have to cut down on the hand traps. And that would mean I'd be opening it less. And it's very awkward because I think hand traps and board breakers, especially hand traps at a high amount, they will always conflict with board breakers. Because the concept of you playing hand traps to begin with is to stop the opponent, right? Like you're not playing it so that they can keep comboing. You're playing hand traps for the purpose that they would stop. So if the purpose is fulfilled of you playing hand traps for them to stop, then it would make no sense for you to dark ruler them and evenly them because they didn't have a board anyways, because that's what your hand traps were doing. So when you mix hand traps and word breakers in, I think what ends up happening, or I actually know what ends up happening, is that like you'll stop them, they won't end on the board, and you'll just sit with these dark rulers in your hand and these evenly in your hands that don't really do anything. And then on the flip side, if you just draw a bunch of board breakers without hand traps, you'll just get comboed. And then your evenlies are less effective because then they set up their crimes, their everything. And then if they dark ruler, they just take it. And then when you try to break through their board, they'll just Soliac, whatever, and then they'll still keep playing. So I think you have to pick one strategy. You can't mix them together because if the main strategy is to open all hand traps, it cannot be mixed in with board breakers. If your strategy is to play board breakers, I don't think mixing in a lot of hand traps is very good. And I just think my theory for this format is you need to open a lot of hand traps. You can only, and to do that, you just play all hand traps. So that's why I did not end up playing board breakers in the end. Even though I know how powerful they are, it just conflicts a lot with the strategy that I'm going for in particular.
Okay.
And that's about it. Yep.
Nice. Yeah, no, I respect that. I guess going now over the tourney, what were your matchups like throughout the whole tourney?
Yeah, so I ended up playing 6 tier Shizu. Believe it or not, I think that was way less than I expected. I expected to play like all 10, but we got 6, which is all right. And then I ended up playing 2 Flunders, 1 Bestial Dragon Link, and then 1 Exo Sister, funny enough. And then in my top cut, top 32, 16, and 8 were all tier Shizu.
Okay, nice, nice.
Mm.
Um, so I guess with the Exit Sister matchup, did you cite? I'm guessing you cited a nib against that matchup. Did you draw it?
Yeah. I decided in. I didn't. I drew it actually, but unfortunately he bricked. Yeah. So I had an opening hand, and I was really excited because I was about to nib this guy, and this is my first time that I was able to be able to use nib. And yeah, he started his turn. He went set 3 pass, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm not using it today.
Did you cite in nib against the Dragon Link deck?
um, no, because he was playing more of like a control version.
Okay.
I noticed I too owed him, but I noticed in game one he would make Striker Dragon, and he didn't use the effect. So at first I thought he drew it, but he never ended up using Boot Sector. So I'm assuming he's just playing not really Dragon Link, but just a Bestial that makes dragons. I don't really know. It was
Was it
very
like
control.
was it maybe like a Dragon Maid version or no?
I don't know. He was playing like Chaos Space to get black and white. He was summoning out like he was making like Lubellion to get the trap, Branded Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Then he was just setting floodgates, like goes and match rivalry with like the Branded Beast.
Okay.
Yeah, that's literally what he was doing. He never played Boot Sector launch. I never got comboed, so I ended up deciding these actually. It's because like I was trying to hit Branded Beast, but then I ended up hitting there can be only one.
Okay.
So like I was like, okay, cool. I'll take it. Yeah.
Nice. Did you ever have like what do you think was like your hardest, I guess, like matchup? I mean, obviously you played against a lot of THGs, so it's really hard to tell like what
Yeah.
your hardest matchup is. But I guess in terms of like
Mm.
the versions of those decks, like which ones do you think are harder for you to play against, and which ones do you think are easier to play against?
Okay, so I definitely okay, so first of all, I'm not saying this just because I lost, but I think the version that I lost in top 8 against Christian Urena was the hardest version. Simply because any his version, if you guys probably saw it, is 3 Agito, 3 Kelbeck for the Ishizus. And any version that plays multiple of those cards are just so good against rogue decks. Because you just anytime you play against a rogue deck, you just mill 5 instantly and you just win the game on the spot. I think the reason why I had such an easier time before I played Christian was because I was playing against builds that were geared towards the mirror more. So I played a lot of tier Shizu where they would have Bystials in their hand. They would only play like one Kelbeck. I saw a guy play one Kelbeck, but some people play three Kelbeck, one Agito. And those builds are a lot easier because they don't have the millers, and they're also playing Bystial cards, which are like they're okay against the deck, but they're not great, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I found the version that's geared towards the mirror a lot easier. But then when I played against his list, which didn't have Bistio cards, which is surprising, and it had Ishizu cards, it just felt like it was a counter to my deck.
Yeah.
Um, so I think any build that's like three Agito, three Kelbeck are really good against Spright. Any build that's geared towards the mirror is obviously going to be good against their mirror. So those decks are a little bit easier, but overall, hardest matchup is just Ishizu tier. It's best deck. You're trying to beat it. The whole main deck is built to beat it. Um, Definitely the hardest matchup by a long shot. Everything else, pretty standard.
Yeah. How's your matchup against Flu? Because I know
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people complain about
Hmm.
their matchup versus Flu, and
Yeah.
I've also heard a lot of people just say it's the easiest matchup. What's
Right.
your decision on that deck?
No, it is pretty polarizing. In my opinion, this is just my opinion from how I feel about it. I think the matchup should, I'm not saying it
Hmm.
should be easy, right? Because Shifter doesn't really do that much. And also, because I'm playing like Ash and Imperms, and also like Red and Carrot and even Smash just being generic good cards against that deck, that it should be easy. But all my food games went to game three. There's always at least one game where they go prosperity, duality, dark ruler, evenly, map, Eaglin. Like there's always that one game that happens, and I'm like, I can't beat this deck. It's impossible. Right. And I think everyone who's played against Flu definitely has had that moment where they're just like, dude, you open shifter, you open evenly, you open dark ruler. I just can't beat it when they do that. But I think it should be easy. Simply because whenever I get shifted, like let's say I'll summon like something generic, right? I summon Beaver, I get shifted right here. I'll just go into gigantic, and then I'll get out my blue, get out my jet, and then I'll get starter. I'll make I'll make a Djinn Buster, which is a very like generic negate with the blue and the jet. That's good against flu. And then if they dark ruler this board, or if they evenly this, or not, I guess not evenly, but if they dark ruler this board, then I still have the starter to bring up the red or the carrot. And what's really nice about summoning red against flu is that red can't be dodged by Advent because it doesn't target; it just negates the effect. So I think like all your cards are like low key built to like beat flu, but it's just there are some games where man like they just open everything. You just can't do it. That's just the flu. But overall, to answer the question, flu in theory very easy. I'm not really scared of that matchup. I'm more scared of how they open, and I think that's a take that most people have. It's like Blue should be easy in everyone's head, right? It's not a good deck, like, but like they draw those hands and you're like, this deck's the best deck ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I really have any more questions. I think I mean, you've done a great job. We've been
Yeah, I
talking
appreciate it.
for like almost
Yeah.
40 minutes.
No,
It's
yo,
been
those questions
great.
are nice. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
those questions are nice. Like yeah, like I played a lot. Like I said earlier, I was top 10 on DB and catch my stream. I was playing a lot on there, and ended up every single card choice was a conscious decision. So I'm glad I had an answer for everything. Not, like I would hate to answer like I don't know. I just like the card. You know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. I was able to answer everything like properly. So
Yeah.
that was
Was there any changes you would want to make, like maybe going towards in the future? I mean, obviously in
mm,
the future it depends on
yeah,
like event to event, but
right.
like for this event, do you think there was any changes you wanted to make?
For this event in particular, no. I think my deck was actually perfect the way I liked it. The only thing that I would want to add is max out on the Bestials. Even though I said I didn't like it, I would still max it out if there was a way to not cut anything and keep it at 40.
Hmm.
But I don't think that's possible. But like in a dream scenario where I could keep it 40 somehow, I would still want to play all the Bestials. Like I said, Tirashizu, best deck, super hard to beat. So I'm trying to add more cards for it, man.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. But besides that, side deck, extra deck is all perfect. Everything was like tested and theorized, and I think I wouldn't change anything.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for the deck profile, Kenny. I really appreciate it. If you guys ever want to check out Kenny, make sure again to check out his Twitch over here. You can also follow him on Twitter. Other than that, what's the next event we're gonna see you at? Do you have any like regionals, or are you going to the YCSs?
Yeah, so another thing, just to like, plug myself, put myself out there. I'm also rank 9 on the world's leaderboard for 2019. So
Okay.
I'm qualified for the world's playoffs. So I'm taking a little short break from regionals, letting other people win. So I'm taking a short break from that right now, but my next event will be the 3v3 in Las Vegas. I'm trying to grind those YCSs right now. So I hope to see anyone there.
All right, well, thank you again so much. And this is Slumpy Slipping out. Thank you guys.
All right.